Hello, folks. It's me again, Amanda Enderman, your trusty tour guide in the wonders of the wonderful city, also known as Rio de Janeiro. And on this video, as I promised you all in my last video, which I will leave the card for you here in case you've just arrived here and you'd like to watch that as well, and I hope you do, I'll make this video speaking about the National Library. Yes, and whose headquarters is right here in this very city of Rio de Janeiro. And well, this is a topic that I'm sure that all of you nerds and bookworms out there are just gonna love. Am I right? And if you are actually a bookworm, as am I, well, a little bit, but if you are actually a hardcore bookworm, good for you. It should be that way, and you should read as much as you possibly can. It will only do you good. And before I go to the theme of the video, I would like to share with you once again that I am currently offering walking tours right here in Rio de Janeiro. Yes, and they are all described on my company's website, which the link will be right down here in the description box for you. So be sure to check that out as well. And I hope that you'll like the tours and you'll book your places, and I'll be able to guide you personally here in the city of Rio. Yes. Oh, and there's news this month, of course. The Historic Churches Tour has just become available and will be available from now on. So all of you who love to visit historic churches, this is the tour for you. So now, finished with the sales moment of the video, let's hop on to the actual theme of the video. So folks, well, when it comes to the National Library here in Rio, up until the Republican period, it was very improvised. Wherever we can store these books, we're storing them. You see, because the original source for the books of the National Library comes from the old library from Dom José, which was organized under the inspiration of Diogo Barbosa Machado, which was an abbot of Saint Adrien Saver. And this collection was begun in order to substitute the Royal Library, which had been destroyed by the fire, which came after the earthquake in Lisbon in November 1st, 1755. So all of this was not even in Brazil. All of this was in Portugal. It hadn't even come to Brazil yet. And boy, may we pay notice here. Lisbon suffered an earthquake and then a fire.
Talk about being an unlucky city.
But anyways, all of this wasn't enough to make the books come here. What was enough to make the books come here was the escape of Dom João VI and the Portuguese court here because Napoleon was threatening to invade. As I mentioned, by the way, in another video that I've already made in this channel, which is entitled Welcoming the Gentry in Rio, which I will also leave the cards for you up here. So when Dom João VI came here, he brought 60,000 books from this library in Portugal because, well, who knows what Napoleon and his troops would do to the library there, am I right? So you have to preserve the books. But along with the books, you see, he brought the first instruments of printing to Rio. Yes, he brought the printing press over here because he wanted to also establish a printing press here so that books and newspapers and such would be able to be printed right here in Brazil. Hooray! Or I think it's back in fashion after a certain series to say huzzah. So huzzah! It was possible to print books right here. So no longer would it be needed for the books to be printed all the way in Portugal, brought all the way here by ship, and for there to be a risk that the books would be lost at sea, in case something happened. No, they would be printed right over here. But the big irony, you see, of this printing press is that the very first book that was printed in Brazil by this printing press established by Dom João VI was Maria de Dirceu, which was written by none other than Tomás Antônio Gonzaga. Oh my goodness. And just in case you're like,
Who is this guy?
you can watch my other video about the Inconfidence of Minas, which I will also leave the cards for you up here. But summing up, he was one of the Inconfidents, which is another word for traitor. Yes. And because of this rebellion, which was considered high treason, he was condemned to exile by Dom João VI's mother, Mad Queen Mary I here in Brazil, or Pious Queen Mary I in Portugal. Yes. So I guess now you're understanding why I'm saying hashtag irony or hashtag the twists of fate. But anyways, let me start my presentation for you firstly. So this over here is a picture of the printing press which I told you about, or as the actual name was, Regal Press. And this over here is the decree signed by Dom João VI in May 13, 1808, which ordered the printing press to be established here in Rio. Huzzah! Once again. Going back to the library, there was also the question of, well, he brought those 60,000 books over here, so where are we going to put them? This is the thing, because when they were brought here, they were stored high and hopefully dry in the ships. But once they were taken out, where are we going to put them? So the first place where they were put was in the hospital of this convent over here, which nowadays, of course, is a museum and has finally been open for visitors, even though there's only one room open. And well, it was kind of anticlimactic, I should say. But they say that they're going to open more rooms of it in the future, so here's hoping, and let us pray. It was a former convent, so appropriate, right? However, there was a plot twist to it. A decree was signed in July 27th, 1810, determining that the books would be stored there. Until then, everything's fine and dandy, except the decree ordered that they should be stored
in the catacombs of the hospital.
Imagine that. By the way, tell me in the comment section below if you would venture to go there to read a book or study or anything like that. I would love to know. So, the library itself was created by a decree signed by Dom João VI in October 29th, 1810. And then the Royal Library was finally created. However, I should make a little parenthesis here in this video, and it is needed because a lot of people mistake the Royal Library for another place which exists also in the downtown area, which roughly translating from Portuguese would be called the Royal Portuguese Reading Chamber. So both because of the name, because of its style of architecture, all of that, people think that, oh, that is Dom João VI's library. And don't feel bad if you think that one is the other or something, because I'll tell you one thing. A friend of mine, which is a historian, also confused them. So don't be ashamed if you do. And most people do, in fact. And I'll show you why. So this over here is the Real Gabinete Português de Leitura, or in English, as I said before, the Royal Portuguese Reading Chamber. As you can see, the style of architecture is the Neo-Manueline style, and the Manueline style was the style which was in fashion in the time of the discovery in the 1500s in Portugal. So basically, Renaissance Portugal thing. But this has nothing whatsoever to do with the Royal Library, with Dom João VI, and all of that. No. This was simply established in 1837 by a group of 43 Portuguese immigrants, which gathered in the house of Dr. Antônio José Coelho Lousada in the former Rua Direita, or right-hand street, which nowadays is the 1 de Março Street. Oh, by the way, I also have a tour in which I explain the names of many of the streets in downtown Rio. And let me tell you, they are creative to say the least. And also, I talk about the new names and such. So, a good tour for you if you're curious about that. But anyways, they gathered in this guy's house and they decided to create this reading chamber, or this library, I should say. And they decided also to pay homage to Portugal in the 1500s. So everything here is taking you back to Portugal in the Renaissance or in the 1500s. So the style, as I said, is the neo-Manueline style. The shape of the front of it is inspired by the monastery of Jerônimos in Lisbon. And also there are 4 historic figures in the statues right in the front. As you can see, there are 2 statues closer to the door and 2 others on either edge of the building, and they are none other than Pedro Álvares Cabral, which was the discoverer of Brazil, Luís Vaz de Camões, which was a very famous Portuguese poet. One of his main epic poems was Os Lusíadas, which basically, once again, advertises Portugal's maritime expansion. Also, the Infante Dom Henrique, which was the prince and, of course, future king, responsible for organizing the expeditions and the school of Sagres. And last but definitely not least, Vasco da Gama, the one who first discovered the path surrounding Africa to India. So, as you can see, it's basically in honor of Renaissance Portugal, but it has nothing to do with the Portuguese royalty or even with Renaissance Portugal. It would be as if I gathered a group of people nowadays and I decided to build a house in 2022, and it would be a medieval house with all medieval things inside, or I don't know, a house replicating an ancient Roman villa or something, and I built it in 2022. So it doesn't mean that it was actually built in the Middle Ages or even in classic antiquity for that matter, because, well, speaking about Brazil, if I would be faithful to the period of the Middle Ages, I would have to build, I don't know, a hut, because that was all that there was over here, the huts that the indigenous were building. And the purpose of this was to provide reading material for not only them, but also the Portuguese immigrants which were here in Brazil, which at this time were quite a few, because you see, in the late 19th century and early 20th century, there were immigrants coming here from all over the world, and along with it, of course, sort of a second wave of Portuguese immigrants, which is the reason why all Brazilians have Portuguese great grandfathers and great grandmothers. This is why. In my generation, at least, because, well, future generations, it will be great great grandmas, great great grandpas, of course. And this next picture over here is of the inside of the library. And it really does look like a medieval library or a Renaissance library, if you will. And it also specifically brings to memory the library of the University of Coimbra as well. It really does echo that. And come on, I mean, it is a great place to go and take pictures, of course. So if you're in Rio, be sure to visit this place. It's very recommended, even though it is quite small. So you'll only go there and take a few pictures outside and a few pictures inside. But it is worth your while. It's not a waste of time. So duly recommended, but it's not the library established by Dom João VI. Let that be clear. So, moving on, when Dom João VI went back to Portugal, after all, Napoleon had been defeated, and also there was quite a bit of pressure by the courts in Portugal for him to come back, and I will visit that topic in future videos, so stay tuned for that. So he took quite a bit of the books that he had brought here back to Portugal, but quite a few of them he left here. So then it was basically divided. A few books went back with him, and a few books stayed over here. And moving on to Imperial Brazil, in 1858, Frei Camilo, which was a friar, actually. He asked that the library, or the books, I should say, would be moved from the catacombs of the hospital to a new place, which is this building over here, which was actually built for that purpose, even though nowadays it is the music department of the Federal University of Rio. So he asked that the books would be moved here. However, oh my goodness. Well, this is why I love history, folks. A lot of these funny anecdotes that you can tell. The thing is that after 3 years of building, the building was opened, yes, but without the improvements that were recommended by the friar. Specifically, the gas hadn't been turned on. The building necessary for the security of the doors of the bookshelves wasn't done. So even the doors of the bookshelves weren't secured in place. And furthermore, the adjoining plot of land wasn't bought, which would have been a very advantageous purchase in order to amplify the space. So you can see one mishap after the other. Call that the opposite of home improvement, or should I say library improvement. Did I mention that until the Republic it was quite improvised? So here you go. And also, another parenthesis, as I said before, this is nowadays the music department of the Federal University of Rio. So one thing that I highly recommend that you look for, which, well, in the previous 2 years with the whole pandemic and all, obviously that hasn't been happening, but I believe that it should be back this year, and certainly next year it's definitely going to be back again. This time of year, normally in July, I am recording this video in July, early July I should say, but normally this time of year there are free music concerts in this very building, which is also in the downtown area of Rio. It's right next to the Lapa Arches, right next to Lapa. And the reason why it's free, it's because it's part of the graduation of the students there. So basically it's their final project, I should say. And specifically, the harpsichord concerts are out of this world. If you've ever heard someone playing a harpsichord, it's naturally out of this world. You close your eyes and you're back to the 18th century or late 17th century. And this is absolutely what you feel like when you go in these concerts. And especially in this place, with this architecture, very much neoclassic, and then there's the harpsichord. I mean, come on. It's a phenomenal experience. So if you're here around June, July, or something like that, be sure to check it out if there are such concerts at the time, because it will be very, very much worth your while to go and watch one of them. Moving on, finally, in the Republican period was when the actual current headquarters of the National Library was built. Also in the downtown area, but this time it's in Cinelândia. And this was built in 1910. And naturally, it was inspired by the École Militaire in Paris. And here you have the École Militaire in Paris. All right, and you can see that it's nearly identical. Let me show you the library again. So the reason why they're so similar is not by sheer coincidence. It's on purpose. Because as I said before in a previous video, I believe it was the Mosaic Sidewalks of Rio. In this video entitled The Mosaic Sidewalks of Rio, which I will leave the cards for you up here, I speak about this also, but the thing is that in this time, in the 1900s, there was a mayor called Pereira Passos who wanted to turn Rio into the Petit Paris, or the Paris of the tropics. So this is why if you go to Cinelândia and you stand there at the square, you'll feel like you're in Paris, basically. Because he built the Rio Branco Avenue, which is this avenue that's on front of the library here, inspired by the Champs-Élysées in Paris. He built the Municipal Theater, inspired by the Opéra in Paris, which I showed you in the video that I mentioned before. He built the National Museum of Fine Arts, which was, of course, inspired by the Louvre in Paris. And he built the National Library, inspired by the Military Academy in Paris. But one thing that stands out is this triangle structure, which is right here in the middle and in the front, which is this one over here. Yes, I have brought a picture for you only of that, which, as you can see, has a lot of different allegories chiseled in the stone. The main one of them in the center is, of course, Marianne, the Brazilian and also the French Republican muse. Oh, those Republicans. Those naughty, naughty Republicans. They don't miss one opportunity of letting people know that, hey, the Republic has begun. Because of this is Marianne, our Republican muse. And if you would like to know her very, very well, I mean, up close and personal, I also have a tour available, which is of the neighborhoods of Catete, Lago do Machado, and Flamengo, which includes the visit inside the Republican Museum, where you will see up close and personal her bust. And you'll know a lot more about this lovely lady here as well. But of course, well, at least they came to their senses, and if only she was there and nothing else, it would be a little too much, shall we say? So what they did was to put other allegories on both sides, symbolizing arts that have to do with writing. Library, books, writing. Got it? Among them, we have cartography, which is symbolized by this lady over here in the left, which is writing things on a map. And also there's a globe here on the far left corner, all representing cartography. Also, we have the press, represented, the printing press, incidentally, with an image of Gutenberg, making the reference to Gutenberg, who brought the printing press to Europe in the Renaissance. And last but definitely not least, bibliography, which, in case you're wondering,
Amanda, but what is that?
well, you know, when you write a paper in college or in school, and the teacher asks you to, after the actual text of your essay or your paper is done, you have to make a list of all of the books and sources and what have you that you took the information from. That annoying bit to do that you have to follow a lot of formatting rules and such. Well, that, my friends, is bibliography, which is also represented right over here. So, folks, this concludes this video about the National Library in Brazil, and I hope you liked it. And if you liked the content, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so that you'll always be duly notified whenever a new video comes along. And most importantly, share this video with as many people as you possibly can so that each time more people may know of the wonders of the wonderful city. And as usual in this channel, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!